the G20 led by France is calling for an end of dollar hegemony. Since you were last on with us 3 weeks ago, Hu Jintao has called for the end of the dollar. What is your take and your view just on the state of the police state in this country, and what's your view on We Are Change confronting Dick Cheney at point-blank range?
Well, Alex, the police state continues to grow. We can see, again, the hypocrisy of the American government. Hillary Clinton is giving a big speech about the need for internet freedom at the same time that the United States government is demanding all the records from Twitter so that they can frame up Julian Assange. So I think the police state will continue to grow. But it has a number of reasons it does grow. As for the demand for the end of the dollar, you could see this, as you probably do, as part of the one world conspiracy, or you could see it simply as the rest of the world trying to get free of American financial hegemony. It's the dollar as reserve currency that gives the United States financial hegemony over the rest of the world. And so we control them. And they're probably tired of that. Without the financial hegemony that we have, we wouldn't be able to force them to comply with our laws and allow our police and our FBI and everything else to run all over their own countries. So it's the threats that we can make to them of excluding them from the world financial system. And this is an important source of the hegemony of the United States government over the rest of the world. And I think that you could probably see the call for some alternative to the dollar as people trying to get free of American domination. So that's my take on that.
Looking at the Egypt situation, you know, we want to be against Hosni Mubarak. We want to see it as the Arabs waking up and saying no to foreign domination. But clearly the globalists, the social engineers, knew that revolution was coming there because of IMF and World Bank programs and food prices going up via commodity increases. And you're an economist, top economist, former, I should have introduced you, father of Reaganomics, former head of policy, Department of Treasury, best-selling author, former Wall Street Journal editor. So I'd like you to speak specifically to commodities going up worldwide and what you think's triggering this. But no doubt the social engineers knew it was coming. So the White House now admits that they triggered it. They basically ordered Mubarak to stand down. He said no. Then he magically had this stroke. Now he's gone, supposedly in Israel. Now they're seizing his assets. What does this say to other Western propped up dictators? Where is the revolution, you're saying? Well, the revolution is just put in a new puppet because people were tired of Mubarak.
Well, I don't think we had much role in his departure. But he had been a faithful American-Israeli puppet for 30 years, and his predecessor prior to him had been a puppet. And Egypt has been the main way that the United States has been able to seal off Gaza so that it stays under Israel's thumb. But the question I raised was, is getting rid of Mubarak a revolution when left in place is the American embassy, the elite, the police, the army, the bureaucracy? They're all still there. So unless the outpourings of all those Egyptians into the streets and their determination to stay there, unless that has caused the elite in Egypt to have a change of mind, nothing much will have changed. And of course, the dollar being the reserve currency, that allows us to purchase the new government, just as we purchased the old government. So I don't know if there's been a change of mind that went beyond the ordinary Egyptians into the elites. That remains to be seen. If there has not been, then sooner or later the Egyptian people will catch on that nothing has really changed. And they'll again be in the streets, this time with leaders, which they lacked in this last outpouring, and more focus. And if that's put down, then I think eventually you'll see civil war. And I agree with Gerald Celente that these regimes are everywhere unstable, and not just in the Middle East, but I think in England and the United States, because of the immense concentration of income and wealth and power in fewer and fewer hands at the expense of the ordinary people. So I think there's no doubt that some big crisis is brewing. How long it takes to manifest itself, I have no real idea.
Well, you've been predicting for years, and so has Gerald, that food prices would start increasing because of dollar devaluation, being the world reserve currency, and other commodities would go up. Here's the Associated Press today. World Bank: food prices at dangerous levels. World Bank President Robert Zoellick says global food prices have hit dangerous levels that could contribute to political instability, push millions of people into poverty, and raise the cost of groceries. Well, no kidding. And the headline out today, 4% increase in inflation just in the last month in the UK. So this inflationary spiral is starting to really rear its ugly head. And you have the people that have basically created this economic climate now posing as the saviors. But in places like Egypt, where you've got 50% of people on $2 a day or less, I mean, hungry bellies, when people are desperate, they do desperate things.
Right, and not just in Egypt. You see, there are multiple causes, I think. It's not only the printing of paper currencies that are driving up food prices. It's also, there have been droughts, there have been floods that have reduced output. And there's also the practice of the first world corporations and land speculators buying up so much land in the third world and forcing the native farmers off of it, such that it's essentially taken out of food production and put into some kind of a global market commodity production. So that, and this is happening everywhere. It's happening in India as well. So when you see the Western countries using the powers of their currencies to dispossess other lands of their agricultural potential, that's another reason for rising food prices. So you have all of those things going on at once, and so you have to, if you want to do anything about it, you'd have to address all three of those things. And of course, you can't do anything about droughts and floods. And so probably if there was a policy of countries maintaining surplus stocks, as the United States used to do with the agricultural support program, that would be a good idea. That was a sensible thing to have done.
Well, expanding on that, I was listening to some farm commodity reports this morning on television, and they were giving examples of in prime farmland in Kansas, Missouri, Indiana, that just a few years ago, they were giving averages. It'd be $1,400 for an acre. It'd be $2,300 for an acre here. And it showed the same places now in Indiana, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 an acre. Kansas, 6,000 plus on average. So just in the, and they admitted it's foreign land speculators, I guess a new bubble outside of real estate, that was the main driver. And so, but then it talked about regular farmers now are trying to buy land to farm, or they're selling it and then stopping farming to the speculators. And so that's another thing that's taking land out of production and basically making it artificially fallow.
That's right. When you print money, you drive people into real things. And it's not just foreign speculators who are buying the land. It's our own as well. I suspect it'll all be organized into derivatives in the end.
Yes, and you're right. To be correct, they just said internationally land speculation is up. Let's look at the U.S. So obviously it's J.P. Morgan Chase. It's everybody doing it.
That's right. It's everybody, and it does take it does dispossess the farmers who produce food. And it doesn't mean the land goes out of cultivation, but it may go into making corn for ethanol, or into some world commodity that doesn't relate to the food needs of the domestic economy. So all of these things are driven by profit and greed and very short-term thinking.
So if the inflation is just now starting to rear its head, how bad is it going to get, and what do you expect that Dr. Roberts to do?
Well, like it's beginning to spike in England. If it's 4% in 1 month, then that's a very high annual rate. And John Williams reported that we had a spike in January here, which, if you took it to an annual rate, would give it 8%. And as you already know, the way, as we've discussed before, the way we measure inflation here actually understates the real measure. So it's probably higher than 8% on an annual rate, based on the January figures here.
But 4% in England in the month of January, that's scary.
That's scary. If you annualize that, you're way up in the double digits. So I think that when inflation spikes, we'll see a collapse in the bond market and in the dollar. And this will then intensify the calls for an alternative international monetary system. I don't quite see how they can pull that off. They're talking about making it SDRs, but that still leaves the Americans, the Europeans, the Japanese, the Chinese in charge of everything. I don't know how they can stick the Chinese currency in before the Chinese currency is fully tradable. They restrict the ability to trade. It's sort of still controlled. So how you stick that in the SDR, I don't know.
Well, they're trying to roll it out now a little bit, where you can dump dollars in and get some derivative of the yuan here in the U.S.
I know it's a derivative. It's not. So I don't know what these outcomes will be. I think they're worth watching and thinking about. You have to keep in mind, too, that the IMF has always been a tool of American policy. And so the notion that the IMF is somehow going to become a tool against American interest, how exactly does that happen? And as I said earlier, I think one way we can see all of this concern about the dollar is that people want to reduce our financial hegemony. And it doesn't mean that they're trying to exploit us or...
Well, plus, if the dollar's being devalued and that's making everybody's prices go up, they've got to start getting rid of the dollar, because it's going to be rack and ruin if this inflation continues. I mean, if a little bit of inflation did that in Egypt, what's going to happen if we've got 20% a year? I mean, this is going to be devastating.
That's right. It's going to be devastating. And if you look at the fact that they're not dealing with budget deficits because they refuse to deal with the wars.
Doc, stay there. I want to see where you think this is going. Talk about the wars. Ron Paul winning CPAC. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts is our guest. We'll be right back.